What's happening right now in southern Syria is not just a local skirmish, it's a brutal and deeply symbolic confrontation that's exposing the cracks in Syria's fragile post-Assad order, dragging in regional power plays and laying bare the ugly face of Israeli manipulation under war criminal Netanyahu's desperate leadership. In Sweida, once a sleepy Druze majority province, the streets have become soaked in blood, sectarian chants echo through destroyed neighborhoods, and the so-called Syrian state has stumbled right into a religiously tinged trap, one that's being gleefully exploited by Israel's war-hardened lawless army.
جبل الدروز لن يكون هذا الجبل إمارة لدواعش البدو.
This isn't the first time the Druze and the Syrian state have locked horns, but this time the stakes are different. Since the ousting of Bashar al-Assad, Syria has been walking a thin line between rebuilding state legitimacy and appeasing restive groups like the Druze, who have long demanded autonomy and in some cases outright defiance. But this month's flare-up in Sweida shattered whatever illusions remained. In just a matter of days, nearly 248 people have been killed, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. That includes at least 92 Druze, 28 of them civilians, and shockingly 21 people executed on the spot by pro-government forces. This wasn't a textbook military operation, it looked more like a violent sectarian purge. Viral videos, though still unverified, paint a disturbing picture. Syrian forces dragging elderly Druze men, shaving their beards in humiliation, and shouting overtly sectarian slogans. This is not counter-terrorism. It's not even war. It's sectarian cleansing under the veil of military action. I truly need your support right now. If you believe in what we're doing here, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It makes all the difference. That small action helps us reach more people, share more truth, and keep this voice alive. That's all I ask. And if you've already done it, from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
After many failed dialogues with Damascus, we were forced to accept a deal under external pressure to stop the bloodshed. We accepted it, yet the shelling continued. To Druze around the world, we are facing extermination. We need your voice. History is watching.
It is a local conflict with a geopolitical relevance, and that makes it more complicated. You have the Druze community in Sweida, which is also divided, but more or less homogeneous. And then you have a Bedouin community which lives around, like in the areas around. So you had always conflict between these communities. This situation is now exacerbated by the fact that you have a government in Damascus, which is a Sunni government, a revolutionary government that the Druze community doesn't trust. So every skirmish on the ground can lead to a major escalation, because the moment the government interferes, and that's exactly what happened now, leads to the widespread assumption among the Druze community that the government is making use of this situation, is basically exploiting this pretext in order to interfere and gain control over Sweida, because the Druze in Sweida are somehow autonomous.
Now, as disgusting as this is, the other side of the coin is no less problematic. The Druze, once known for standing their ground and resisting foreign meddling, have in recent years grown far too cozy with the Israeli occupation machine. Let's be honest, some Druze serve in the Israel Defense Forces, actively participating in Netanyahu's genocidal campaign in Gaza. It's an inconvenient truth many in the region want to ignore, but it's glaring. Druze loyalty in places like the Golan Heights has been chipped away, with the Israeli government offering favors and incentives in exchange for silence and complicity. In Gaza, reports have circulated of Druze IDF members directly involved in home demolitions and surveillance of Palestinian civilians. So yes, the Syrian army had every reason to be on edge when facing Druze militias, but once again, instead of strategic military engagement, what we saw was an ugly sectarian retaliation. That's just as damning.
This community is spread across 3 borders in the Middle East. We have a map to show you the spread of the Druze community, because you have Druze community members, you will see in this map, in Israel, in the northern Galilee area. There's a Druze community in Lebanon, where they can play an important role in Lebanese politics. And the biggest community is in Syria, and Sweida province is considered the heartland of the Druze. Now, the Druze of Israel are a very influential minority in Israel. When the Israeli state was formed in 1948, the Druze were integrated into the state, unlike the Palestinians, for example. So you have Druze community members who serve in the Israeli military. They are, they have powerful political voices, and there have been fears that since the fall of the Assad regime, that the Druze minorities' security will not be secured. So Israel, claims to be protecting the Druze minority.
Now throw Netanyahu into this bloody cocktail and things spiral even further into geopolitical madness. As usual, the Israeli government, under the leadership of a man now openly dodging public appearances and drowning in internal dissent, decided that this was a golden opportunity to strike Syria, not for any humanitarian cause, not to protect Druze civilians, but to manipulate the unrest and expand Israel's illegal occupation. Israeli airstrikes targeted Syrian military installations in Sweida, while government forces were engaged in street battles. It was a textbook Zionist move. Weaken the state from within, then bomb it from the outside under the pretext of security. Netanyahu and his gang of war criminals continue to act with absolute impunity, flying jets over sovereign Syrian airspace, dropping bombs and walking away like nothing happened. What's more disturbing is that these airstrikes coincided perfectly with the rise in sectarian killings, almost as if Tel Aviv wanted this fire to spread.
Is a government in which there is a certain degree of diversity, but core offices are held by who used to be HTS members. I think the main problem for the security, however, is not so much the cabinet. It is the ground forces, and these are really limited in size. I think that this is one of the problems in extending control over all Syria. And then, of course, we have a legacy of unresolved conflicts, of newly erupting conflicts. And if we look particularly at the south, the Druze have said they don't want government forces to be there. They want to grant their own security. And I think this is part of the problem, because part of the Druze really rejected now the government forces coming there. We also heard that parts of the government forces joined the fighting on the Sunni side. So it's really a messy situation in which it is not even clear what would need to be done to grant security here and who should grant it.
Let's not forget the larger picture. For decades, Israel has coveted the southern parts of Syria, especially the Golan Heights, which it still illegally occupies. Netanyahu's vision has always been about strategic buffer zones and the disintegration of Syria into manageable pieces. Druze statelets here, Kurdish enclaves there, Alawite holdouts up north. Divide and control. The latest round of violence gives him the perfect excuse to call for more militarized buffers under the lie of protecting minorities. But the world knows his real aim: land theft, destabilization, and distracting the Israeli public from his own collapsing coalition and the raging resistance in Gaza that just won't die. Meanwhile, Syria's leadership isn't coming out of this smelling like roses either. There are growing whispers of backdoor normalization talks between Damascus and Tel Aviv taking place in cities like Baku and Abu Dhabi. And what for? Empty promises of reconstruction aid and security guarantees in exchange for giving up on Palestine. If Syria ever shakes hands with Israel before Palestinians see freedom and justice, it will be a betrayal of historic proportions, a betrayal of every Arab soldier, every Palestinian child, every protester that ever rose against Zionist colonialism. And the fact that such discussions are even being entertained while Israeli bombs fall on Gaza and Damascus alike is beyond disgraceful. It's treason dressed in diplomatic suits. All of this goes to show that the current Syrian Druze conflict is not just a tragic sectarian civil war. It's a regional powder keg laced with Zionist fingerprints. Netanyahu wants to paint Syria as the new Lebanon, ripe for partition, weak enough to push around, divided enough to exploit. But he may be in for a brutal reality check. Syria isn't Lebanon. Syria has historically been a thorn in Israel's side, and despite all the current betrayals and failures, there are still people in that country who remember the cause. Netanyahu's latest power games, launched from the skies of the occupied Golan, might look clever in the short term, but they are awakening an old anger, one that could very well redraw the map in ways he never anticipated.